So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Cosmic Conversations. I am your host, Sheila Seppi, and I am so excited because tonight we have and it was so funny. I was just telling her, you're one of my oldest friends, not age wise, but oldest friends since I moved to Colorado, and that is Katherine Skaggs. I absolutely love Katherine. I met Katherine actually at a metaphysical fair. She was doing soul portraits, and I had my soul portrait done. I still have it. I've had several done ever since we actually. I actually brought her to my office several times, and we would have people to come and they would have their soul portraits. So, of course, I had to have mine as well. But before I bring Katherine up, let me tell you just a little bit about her. And before I even do that, I want to welcome everyone that's here with us in our audience. And whether you're watching us live or on replay, if you're watching us on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. Leave us a couple comments. If you're watching us on Roku or Amazon or Apple TV, welcome, welcome, welcome. And if you're watching us on our phone apps or on our live streaming on the website, thank you so much for doing that and joining us. So now that I've welcomed everyone, I want to give Katherine a welcome because she is an award-winning author. She's a visionary artist. She's also the painter, as I mentioned, of souls. She's a shamanic practitioner, and she is a spiritual teacher. Now, Katherine is well known for her soul portraits and her spirit guide paintings, as well as being the artist of the Mythical God Tarot. And if you don't have that deck, guys, I'm sure Katherine can tell you where to get it. I have it in my office. People pull the cards all the time. They absolutely love them. And she's also the author and the artist of the award-winning book, Artist, Shaman, Healer, Sage. Timeless wisdom, practices, ritual, and ceremony to transform your life and awaken your soul. And tonight, Katherine is here with us, and she's going to be speaking about the divine goddess. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring Katherine on up here. So, Katherine, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sheila. What a great intro.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to tell people too, I guess it was probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. Katherine was at the office. We were doing soul portraits, and she had been on a trip and came back, and she had gifted me with a little crystal. I think it was from the stone forest, maybe. Anyway, and it was perfect. It fit right in my little medicine pouch, and I was just so happy to have that stone. And I put my hand out gently to take this little bitty baby to put in my hand, and when I did, the weight of it just took my arm down to the floor. I could not believe it. And here I am bringing my arm back up, and when I did, it had activated my crystalline body. And honestly, I looked like Edward in those vampire movies. What was it? Twilight. I was glistening everywhere. And anyway, long story short, there was a whole lot of other events that took place, but it activated my crystalline body. I actually had to call my husband to come and to pick me up because I couldn't even drive the 2 blocks home to my office. And as soon as he walked in, he's like, "My gosh, have you girls been in a glitter fight?" That's how profound that stone had affected me. And so you never know how the DNA is going to activate a memory within your own body. And for me, it activated my crystalline body. I still have that little crystal, and it's still in that same little medicine pouch. So I thank you for that, and thank you for that experience. It was a blast, and I know you guys are going to have a blast with Katherine tonight too. So I'm going to quit talking and turn it over to Katherine. So glad to have you here, and much love.
Cool. Thank you, Sheila. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm getting to speak about one of my favorite topics is the divine feminine and the goddess. And actually, the deck I released that you were talking about is the Mythical Goddess Tarot, and it's filled with 22 goddesses from around the world. But I'm going to get into that a little bit later. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I got here. I'm going to give you some backstory and weave that into some storytelling into the divine feminine and the awakening that's taking place right now, and how we're all catching it on some level. And it's about the times that we're in, how to move beyond this chaos and what's falling apart as a new world order, as a new energy is entering in that really is about the restoration of the divine feminine. It's about the restoration of our hearts and our power as female, but it's about that energy that's within every one of us, no matter our gender. So how did I get here? I want to talk about this because some of you may relate and know that that's an important piece to hear, is that I didn't start out here consciously. I began a journey in a very conservative place in Oklahoma, of all things. And I knew that I was different. You're going to hear some of my dog in the background, so I apologize because she needs to settle in here. She's one of my female soulmates, I suppose, in a furry body. So anyway, I grew up in Oklahoma, and the saving grace I had in my life were my dogs, my horses, and the land, because the humans didn't quite make sense. You ever feel like that? I know Sheila did. all of us probably, right? So, it's been quite a journey, and there's been a lot of breadcrumbs along the way, as there always are for us. It's a matter of becoming open to those breadcrumbs. And, fortunately, I was always an artist, always a creative being. And that was one of my saving graces too, to do my art. Yet it took many years for my art and my spirituality to catch up and to begin to make greater harmony and sense to me, that they were about, catching the frequency of the divine, learning to be a messenger, not just to make imagery, but to truly be a divine messenger through the art. So anyway, my journey took me, I wrote it all out. I don't know if I'll read it all to you because that seems kind of boring, because I am a storyteller. I feel fortunate that along the way of that shift from Oklahoma, I eventually in my 20s went to art school, and that's where I began to dive into the mystical, dive into that which is hidden, which often has been referred to in earlier times as the occult, which has had a bad rap, actually. It's come out of the dark ages. It's been a time where nothing about our spiritual past was truly transparent. And this all is really important background to how we're coming into the age of Aquarius and the age of the divine feminine awakening that is happening for all of us, that there's energies that are coming at us from the cosmos that are activating our light bodies and that are also within the energies of the earth. Sheila, you talking about that crystal is an awesome opening, actually, that segues into the magic that's taking place with us. I'd been to the stone forest high in the Andes at about 17,000 feet on one of my shamanic adventures before I saw Sheila and brought that crystal to her. And on that journey, it was pretty magical, actually. I got up into about our first camp at 10,000 feet, and I felt the goddess in the mountains. I felt Divine Mama in the mountains, and I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting trip. And then I proceeded to get physically ill. Well, it was a spiritual illness. I'm sure that was a cleaning out, but it was quite a trip for about 5 days. I kept wondering why I was in this amazing journey in the Andes. And at the same time, I was going through a lot of unpleasant symptoms in my physical body. So by the time we got up to the second camp at 16,000 feet near the stone forest, I've been doing these epic prayers to heal. And the thing that happened that is important to tell prior to picking up those crystals, it's like at that high in the Andes Mountains, it's like you're touching the heavenly realms. And the story about these crystals, they're considered like double terminated quartz. They're very tiny Herkimer shaped diamonds, truly. And my teachers and the shamans there will tell you that they carry the frequency of the light of the stars in the heavens that have come to Earth, and they're some of the oldest, highest energies that you can connect to. So bringing that and gifting that to, I don't even have any myself. I've given them all away. So, and that's a good generosity lesson too, to know that I must have that energy in me to be able to give you that crystal. So that story is pretty cool because it is the activation of that light that is coming with these energies that are coming to Earth to help us move into a new age. And that's what the divine feminine is all about, the restoration. So anyway, on this crazy journey, I grew up Christian. I grew up in a very conservative household, and I didn't feel like I belonged. And I know I'm talking to the right crowd here, because I'm sure that we've all had those experiences to be here today. And that's an important background, because as we get deeper into what the divine feminine is, what it is to us, what is the reawakening, how do we know that it's happening? It's very connected to coming out of a sleepiness. It's coming out of a domination patriarchal model. And as a child, intuitively, I knew I didn't fit, that the model that was around me didn't feel good. And that's why I retreated to nature and my animals, which are a perfect reflection of Mother Earth and the divine powers of the feminine on this planet and what she offers us. So as I departed my religious background, I began into metaphysics in my 20s. And that was one of my first awakenings right there, was start to peek through the illusions of this planet to get to truth. I want to talk more about the divine feminine, though, before I go into that. I got here because of picking up the breadcrumbs, following my intuition, even when I didn't feel like I knew how. And this journey into metaphysics was one of my first recognitions that something was harmonious. And that's a good sign that you're dropping into a heart space, you're dropping into more feminine quality, and that it wasn't about chasing the dream of the greed, it was about finding my soul. And so the divine feminine is the yin, or the feminine aspect of God, or the divine, the universe, great spirit, whatever you want to call it. And I want to read you something that my dear friend Sage Holloway wrote in the Mythical Goddess Tarot that feels like a great entrance to connecting to the divine feminine. But somebody needs to mute, please. I got a feedback loop on that. The salvation of our species lies within each one of us, female and male, to reunite with the sacred feminine essence. By doing so, we tap into the very core of creation and remember our eternal being. Our planet and all her species are at a delicate crossroads. The key to the survival of life on Earth in these days is the integration and expression of the sacred feminine in each and every one of us, male and female. At this crucial time of the planet, humankind is being forced out of denial of its own divinity. Specifically, the spirit of the goddess on Earth, not necessarily in worship, but in honoring in each one of us our feminine core being. She has always existed in all of her forms, no matter how buried, and is now returning to the full expression for the healing of humanity. The Mythical Goddess Tarot has been brought forth with this intention to assist all people in accessing their divine feminine essence. The major arcana goddess images that I will talk about tonight in some form or fashion to relate their stories and messages all reflect the sacred feminine essence and are actual doorways or portals into these dimensions. Yes, by invoking and working with these divine feminine goddesses, we are transformed and we transform the world around us. And I want to thank Sage Holloway as a dear friend, but also a co-creative that helped me drop into my relationship and restoration of the divine feminine that I could become a storyteller and help others awaken. All right, hang on, my dog is making noise. She only has 3 chewies with us, so we're going to try and keep those. And humor is one of the qualities of the divine feminine too. So she's my clown medicine we're bringing in today. So Sage Holloway, I'm going to honor a couple of my wisdom teachers and call them in as we begin this tonight. So Sage Holloway, she's a little older than me. She was born in the early 50s, grew up in LA. Her dad worked for Columbia Records and actually signed the Beatles. So she grew up in the entertainment business and became a folk singer. And yet she was a mystic. At age 12, she began reading the tarot. And by the time she was age 17, she began to vision a divine feminine tarot deck. I mean, it's like this girl was awake. She was curious and she was sassy. And when I met her in 1991, I was a little serious at the time as I opened a metaphysical store, or a lot serious. And Sage brought some levity to me, but she also recognized me on a soul level. Almost immediately after she saw some of my artwork, which is nothing like it is today, it really was a different Catherine's expression, is that she said, I think you're the artist of this divine feminine tarot deck I've been visioning since I was 17. And I remember saying, great. And then life went on and we didn't do anything, or it didn't happen. And this undulated for 15 years through times of getting to know each other better, through times where we had lost contact, to reuniting in early 2004. And then coming into, it took me 2 more years until I went to Rome to see it through the eyes of the goddess, pre-patriarchy, when I got the message that it truly was time for us to create this deck. So one of the principles in the divine feminine model that I like to follow is learning how to trust that everything is in flow, that there are cycles, and that when the time is right, you absolutely will be in the right place for everything to happen. And so that was what happened, is that the timing came later, and many things had to happen before it was primed and ready to go. So let's talk about that. Also, I'd like to honor, there goes somebody needs to mute again. I would like to also honor Lydia Rule as this beautiful ancient goddess woman who taught me a great deal about the goddess and about the divine feminine. Lydia's also passed over now, but she, for many years, for 26 years, I believe, she took women and men too on journeys around the world to meet the goddess through something called Conversations with the Goddess. And it was through her that I went to Rome and to Paris to meet the goddess pre-Christianity. And that, I'm going to talk about that a little later and relate to some of the teachings that came along the way that are going to help us get connected to the divine feminine. Lydia, at age 60, began painting, or rather creating goddess banners that ultimately hung around the world for the next 20 years on her watch, and continue to do so at sacred sites, at goddess gatherings, and many sacred places to bring the stories of the goddess back and to help us remember that part of ourselves and reclaim the importance of that divine feminine within our very beings. So what is the divine feminine in the age of Aquarius? Why do those two go together? Well, it's kind of interesting as I was putting together a little bit of extra research into my journey with the goddess over many years. And, I think of the age of Aquarius as being now. And some astrologers will say that it's not actually started yet. Well, I'm like, yes, it has. Yeah, we're feeling it. You bet we are. Well, there is a Gnostic philosopher, Samuel Onwior, I probably don't say his name right, I have to apologize if that's true, who declared that on February 4th, 1962, that the beginning of the age of Aquarius had begun. And if you think of the 60s, imagine all the massive change that was taking place. We were protesting the war. It was the hippie age, burning the bra age, the age of feminism. We were taking back some of what had been lost over the years. It's very important to know that these astrological and celestial events taking place are part of the energies supporting us to shift. These are part of the energies coming in right now that are activating our light bodies. They're activating our memories of our wholeness, because the reclamation of the divine feminine is the reclamation of these parts of ourselves that have been demonized and suppressed for several thousand years. There's actually an astrological influence. You know, we're in what many of us consider the Kali Yuga, or the end times, which is the end of a 26,000 year cycle. And the precession of equinoxes, I think it's called, is actually that we've moved into a cycle that's a 13,000 year cycle. And I don't want to get all technical because I'm not an astrologer. I can give you this information, but I really am the intuitive who feels and senses all this, that wants to get into the goddess talk. But it's very connected that we are in a flow and a cycle that is bringing the energy to break away these dominating patriarchal energies that keep us out of power, that make us the bitch, excuse my language, but it's the thing where the feminine, whether it's in a male or in a female, or it's in the earth, we've made toxic, we've demonized it, or humanity, mankind, fell asleep during the age of Aries and the age of Pisces, through war and through domination models. We are at a different juncture now. And the chaos is the death of the old. So the good news is that we are moving into these regenerative energies as we kill off the ego, part of ourselves that's separate from our divinity. That this restoration of the divine feminine that brings us back to heart, that brings us back to harmony, is that place that's actually energetically being supported, that we can transform with greater ease and grace as we participate and take personal responsibility. So I'm going to put up a little slideshow just so you had some art and not just a talking head here. How's that sound? And then I'll go a little deeper into every bit of this. Okay. All right. So the divine feminine is about healing. It is about birthing hope. It's about transformation. The good news is that as these energies come in, we can expect greater humanitarian effects. We can truly know that the sustainability model that many are exploring is about our future into the Aquarian Age, is about our future of coming back together and honoring Mother Earth, honoring our bodies, and honoring harmony, co-creative efforts, and all the energies that give us true freedom to be ourselves. This is a Renaissance time. And it's as we let go of the old, we move into these new energies. It's a time to remember history. I got really in depth in some of my writings, so I'm not going to tell you all of them because they don't seem important as I'm talking to you. We are returning home on a soul level. So I want to talk about the importance of history as we get into returning to the divine feminine. You know, I'll be talking about how I got here in my movement to Rome and to see it through the eyes of the goddess. And it's very interesting, the series of events that occurred that got me to being a storyteller of her story rather than his story, history. Isn't that a cool idea that we're gonna get back to some truth, some love, and what creates harmonious ways of living that is beyond the domination model? Actually, recently on this new moon, a friend of mine who's an astrologer wrote that the energies of this new moon and all the planetary alignments, particularly the movement of Saturn, was moving us out of the domination model of who's going to dominate next into how shall we thrive. And that is a completely matriarchal model, that everyone comes into the circle, that there is no one at the top, that we are living in a co-creative manner that creates healing, thriving, abundance, and restoration on all levels. So what is herstory and how did I get into that and meeting the Divine Mother? So I'm going to tell you some of my adventures that got me here. They're pretty interesting and they have a lot of stories and wisdom in them. So in my adventures, I opened a metaphysical store in the 90s and had that for about 7 years. Loved it. It was named Dreamweaver here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And it was very connected to the feminine, but I really was still acting as a 30-some-odd-year-old in a very productive workaholic manner. Imagine that. Anybody ever do that? Yes, we get a little busy and we kind of forget to rest and be in pleasure. And that's exactly what I did. And as a result, that last year I owned my store, I got very physically ill. I went through a dark night of the soul. I didn't work for a whole year. And it put me into a pretty crazy place. And in the process, I ended up having to get back to work. And I worked in corporate America for a couple of years, which was very weird and felt like out of my skin and not in the right place. And yet I recognized that I was like the angel in the midst of the darkness for a lot of people. And that I had to also go through my own darkness to find my way back home. And when I did, I had an opportunity and I opened a second metaphysical store with a friend. And I had, during that time period, stopped painting. For 5 whole years, I stopped painting. And that was like a drought for me. It was part of the dark night of the soul. And it was also a departure from my true nature in the divine feminine. If you aren't creating, if you're stuck and you don't feel creative, whether it be dancing or singing or gardening or telling a story or doing artwork, what is your creativity? If your creativity is out of your life, you are somehow disconnected from your own true nature and your divine feminine. So I'm going to tell you that I hope today will be an inspiration to create, to really deepen into where your creative voice is. And it can be cooking. It can be how you solve problems. But every one of us has this amazing creative force. So anyway, as I was preparing to open the store, my partner in the store called upon a dear friend who's an amazing artist and divine feminine teacher, a wonderful priestess in her own right. Her name is Sheila Sophia, and she has done many good things in the world since I first met her, including going to the UN and starting women's programs and creativity programs there. And she's also began a worldwide movement of the Red Thread movement, which is about connecting women. She also created and is the founder of the Intentional Creativity Movement. I teach intuitive painting and she does too, but she has taken it to a worldwide movement. I have a lot of love and respect for her. But I met her and she saw some old artwork and she said, "Katherine, are you painting?" And I had to say, no, I wasn't. And she said, "You know what? I came here for you." And so synchronicity number 1, trust your intuition. Even when you're asleep, there are always these magical synchronicities taking place. And it was really clear that this was one to help me come home to myself. And so in the process, Shiloh took me to the basement of my house, which was finished. She did a wonderful meditation with me and then took me to my studio, which I always had, even when I wasn't painting. And she had me get out a canvas, the largest one, which was 3 foot by 4 foot. And in the process, she had me, she got out these little paints and put on the palette and she'd put a brush in it. She'd hand it to me. And I'm like, okay. And she said, "Just paint." And what happened was I started to paint a goddess. It just flooded out of me. And she said, boy, you're really confident. I said, I've been doing this since I was a little girl. It's who I am. So this is coming home. So from that moment, it's as if all that was backed up and blocked inside me began to pour out. So for days and months, I painted the divine feminine. It was the mother goddess. It was the Black Madonna and child. It was the Madonna and child. It was Mother Mary. It was Mary Magdalene. It was Guadalupe. And I wasn't just painting them to paint them. They were there to heal me. So I'll tell you this about sacred art, whether you're creating it through your intention and a prayerful mindfulness, a heart-centered mindfulness to create, or you're viewing it, it is filled with energy and activations. I know that what some of the magic that's happened is that every one of these paintings is a doorway or portal to the divine and are emitting particular frequencies to awaken your heart. It's an old mystery school practice to gaze upon symbols or sacred art to go into the subconscious and the inner worlds of consciousness. And I practiced that not with sacred art, but with symbolism when I was in my mystery school. So as I come around here in the early 2000s and this art starts to happen intuitively, I started to be not only transmitting and channeling these divine beings and their messages, their energies, but I started to experience healing. And in particular, about the time of the early days of that second store, I started to get a download of Mother Mary and this image you see before you here in my mind's eye and in my heart. And I knew I needed to paint it. But I was busy. I'd go home at night and I'd fall asleep. How many of you do that? Where you're too busy to stop to do what's in your heart. And that was happening again. It was 3 days I felt all this energy about creating this imagery. And on the third night, I fell in bed again. And somewhere after I'd fallen asleep, Mother Mary came and woke me up. And she was transmitting telepathically energetic packets of information to me that I understood. And I got up and I went into my studio and got a big canvas and started painting what she was transmitting. And she was teaching me at the same time with this transmission. She was activating me and filling my heart with love. That she was letting me know that this image was important for it to get out to the world, not to sell an image necessarily, but to have it available for those that may not read about it and be in their mind, their intellect, which is a very linear thing, but to get to the heart and to the feeling senses, the intuitive aspect of it, which is the divine mama. And so I painted all night with her transmissions of love. I understood at the time that she was guiding me to my destiny, that she was watching over me to my destiny. I'll guarantee you that all these goddesses I mentioned today and so many more are here watching over you and guiding you. If you're sitting on this call or come to this call at some time, is that you're getting the messages that you are being guided and watched over, that there are synchronicities and messages that are important for you to hear that are right around you, and that your next steps are being revealed as a result of it, that you may be getting a healing tonight or in the next days that come through Mother Earth or through these images and other divine feminine images that are here for you to remind you of your wholeness and your divinity. So I painted all through the night on this 3 foot by 4 foot canvas. And I took it to my store the next morning and hung it up. I was about 85, 90% done. And I remember my partner at the store looked at it. I could see her lusting for it, like, I want that. And I was like, that may not be yours. I don't know. So I went back in the back end of the store to work on the computer system. And someone came in the afternoon and asked if that painting was for sale. Now, mind you, I had not sold a painting in 20 years. I hadn't tried. And so at the time, I ended up talking to this lady and said, I only work intuitively. Let me call you and I'll tell you what I can do tomorrow. So I went home and talked to Mary, and she said, if you want to sell this painting, you can. We're lined up for you to paint us. And I thought at the time, what does that mean? And it's gone on to be an interesting unfolding in that I've probably painted, well, I've painted 22 goddesses for the Mythical Goddess Tarot in the next year, but I have painted hundreds of divine beings since that day and understood that, being the artist channel has been a real gift to get to meet all these amazing beings and to learn their stories. So they're here for you tonight. And I want to introduce you to some with their lessons, their love, and their teachings for you. So if you like this image, it is the energy of unconditional love for us. It is the energy of transformation. She's here to remind us that we have everything we need, and that as we return home to the divine feminine, that we will begin to transform the challenges in our lives through love. All right, let's talk about, let me see here. I'm going to talk about my trip to Rome into conversations with goddesses pre-Christianity, because that's a really important part of coming home to the divine feminine and understanding where we came from. There was once a time when matriarchal societies ruled the earth, pre-patriarch, pre-Christianity. And these energies of that divine mother live in this planet. It lives in our cells, as does the fall, as I call it, when the patriarchy began to come into existence. And we're moving out of that right now. That's the cycle we're moving into the divine feminine. And that's why we see so much chaos. But when I went to Rome, as I said earlier, I went with Meinrad Craighead, who is an artist, a 70-year-old scholarly artist that I met in 2006 on that trip. But I also knew of her because I used to sell her art in calendars in my first store in the 90s. So that was a real trip. But I also met Lydia Rule again for a second time. And her wisdom, she is also a 70-year-old artist at the time, back in 2006. And the cool thing about Lydia is that she grew up in Greeley, Colorado, and became a teacher at UNC, the college over in Greeley. And as she was teaching art history, she found out in the 60s, there were no women in the art history books. I mean, my gosh, can you all believe that? Some of us who are older can absolutely understand that. So Lydia said, why not? And she was this feisty, small 5-foot woman, if she was that. And she came from a very matriarchal, empowered female family. And she made sure that the women came into the art history classes at UNC, which is also pretty amazing to me. So one of her messages, one of the things that would happen when we were in Rome was that we had the opportunity to get stories or conversations with the goddess every single morning. So I got to learn the backstory pre-Christianity about the goddesses that lived in old Europe and in this part of the world that had temple spaces where they were excavating sites still of the goddess Cybele, where the churches, when the church came in, they built atop the temple sites where the goddess temples were. They completely took over, but they knew that those sites were filled with energy and power. And so they built on top of them. I even went to the Vatican City, where there's more pagan art than anywhere in the world. Isn't that interesting? Is that they have hidden away or kept all these imagery and statues and stories that are coming back to life now. So as I learned about these stories and backstory, particularly 4 AD, when Constantine was in power and Christianity was illegal, was that they fell in love with the Christians and they legalized Christianity, and the church soon followed, which was all about power over the people. They adopted many of the pagan stories which were filled with the goddess, which were filled with all the stories of connection to the land, the spirits in the land, and they turned it into Christian stories, which is pretty fascinating. If you look at Isis and Horus and many other similar stories, you'll find it's the same story as Jesus and Mary, and not always the full story through Christianity, unfortunately, but there's many good stories within that. So at the end of our time there, one of the things that Lydia said to us that I want to say to you as I tell some of these stories is that we've heard his story, history. It's time we tell her story. Just do it. So when I came home, I called Sage and I said, I finally got the message. Let's do this tarot deck. And over the next 18 months, I channeled in 78, actually 79 paintings for the cards in the deck, plus the back of the cards. And in that process, a lot of magic happened. And I'm going to tell you about some of these goddesses and their lessons to help bring you to the heart of your true essence as divine feminine. So, you know, this time that we're in, it's time we no longer deny our true selves. And hopefully these stories will help you activate and connect to some of their stories and how they relate to you in your life and what you get to reclaim at this time. I'm just going to skip past a couple of these as I begin in. All right, so I've told you some of the story with Sage. So I'm going to get into the journey of some of these goddesses and their symbolism and what they had to teach us. Regardless of the tarot deck, in addition to the tarot deck, that's an interesting thing that we took an old male-oriented hidden system and we turned it into a divine feminine awakening system to trust your intuition. And that's probably the most important part. So, you know, when I began to engage with the painting process of the goddesses, there were different goddesses that absolutely talked to me. Every one of them talked to me, but I had some very profound mystical experiences in the process of bringing them in. So I want to tell you a little bit about Ix Chel, the image you see here, and who she is and what happened when I started to paint her, and how you can look for this mystery in your life too. And hopefully this story will ignite something in yourselves. So the Mayan moon goddess is Ix Chel. Ix Chel means rainbow jaguar goddess. And she is a goddess of fertility, a Mayan goddess of fertility. She is connected to the moon. You see that little rabbit glyph in her hair, and the rabbit is a symbol of fertility too. It was also in the Mayan symbol system, a symbol of the lunar self, the moon. And what's very interesting, again, going back to the masculine and the tarot, in the, I'm going to call it the old tarot or the original tarot, is that the moon card in that deck was considered a negative energy. And I think, really, how could that be? That's pretty weird. It was an energy of deception or what was hidden, but they made it into a really ugly and bad thing, which is, you know, truly getting back to that energy that relates to how we've been suppressed, how the feminine has been suppressed. I'm just checking. I have another story to tell you, but I guess Ix Chel's first. So when I began to paint her, I had come out of a really bad relationship that was an amazing relationship until it wasn't. And I'd broken up and my heart was broken, but I'm working on this tarot deck, but my energy systems keep blowing out during this time period. I'd go to some very powerful healers here in Fort Collins, and yet I couldn't hold my energy. It was like I would feel great, and then all of a sudden it's like all my chakras would blow out. And so as I'm sitting with Ix Chel, one of the things that had happened was, you know, I do my research just in terms of what does a Mayan woman look like. I had a feeling for her, but I didn't have a good visual reference in the physical reality. But everything I researched, nothing felt right, nothing looked right. And so I had Sage go to the library and get a book that was an on anthropological book going back to Mayan ruins and finding some imagery or statuary of Ix Chel as she would have been when she was worshipped in earlier Mayan days. And in the process, what happened was when Sage brought me that book and I saw these photographs of some old ruins and a statue of Ix Chel, I felt it in the book and I immediately knew her. I immediately felt her and had an idea what she actually might have looked like. So as I was painting her, I began to weep. I began to cry. I could feel her gratitude coming into my heart. And she began to communicate with me and tell me how grateful she was that I was here to help tell her story again, that she had been missing too long from the storybooks, and many of us didn't remember or know her. And so she gifted me during that time, not only the imagery that came into this painting, you see these two pyramids, which actually the painting's kind of truncated because it's actually painted on a 3-foot by 3-foot square canvas. But there were these two jaguars that were in the painting energy, but I didn't paint them physically. And in her gratitude, she gifted me energetic jaguars, ethereal jaguars, to help me with my energy field. And I immediately felt a male and a female jaguar. The female would walk beside me and the male would walk before us and to protect us. And my energy quit blowing out. It was very profound. And so, I'm telling these stories because these goddesses are alive and well and here to help you too. Is that, symbolically in this card or symbolically, she's here to say, go within. Your lunar subconscious nature is your feminine. It is the power of the divine feminine. That lunar nature is as important as that solar energy of our sun. That lunar nature is what is the time that we plant the seeds for our crops in spring, for them to become full and fertile. It's the energy of any new project. It's the blessings for mothers and their children. And so this creativity that flows through that lunar place of going within is part of what we're here to restore. So call upon Ix Chel if you need to connect to that origin of life, to your creativity, to your fertility for life. And ladies, if you've hit menopause and are older crone people, let me tell you, or mothers without children, let me tell you, she is here for you too, that when we shift into menopause, that energy of Kundalini and life force is no longer going out to birth children, it's coming back in and moving upwards to awaken consciousness. So your creativity is one of your greatest resources, that is of the divine feminine. And it is of your greatest resources to take you into a soul awakening, to remember yourself as sacred and divine. And that's perhaps one of the most important things I find. So you can gaze upon this image or other images that are of the divine feminine to help you restore and awaken your true self. So I'm going to talk about Lakshmi next. I've only got a couple of these really outlined to talk about. I could talk about all of them, but it would be here a lot longer than this hour. So I'm going to bring in some of the magical stories of what happened during the creative process to bring these particular ones to you tonight and into the tarot. So who is Lakshmi? And why am I talking about her? Well, I actually painted her first out of all the 22 goddesses. And she's very interesting in that I didn't plan on painting her the night that I painted her or the day that I painted her. I had been working on all the lower arcana suit of the seas, which is the water suit elementally. And it's about our emotions. So it's pretty cool that we return back to the elements as part of the foundation of our deck. And the water suit's really important because it is about intuition. It's about the feminine, the subconscious, the creative. And if we're in stagnant waters of life, we could be denying our passions, denying our heart's desires. And so the water suit has a lot of emotional energy, and I'm a Pisces Cancer with a lot of Scorpio. So believe me, I felt it all as I painted it. And I was pretty tired at that point. So I went home, and it was a weekend, and I just wanted to be open to my creativity. I'd been studying mandalas and thought perhaps I'd paint a mandala. So I got into my studio and I picked up a 3-foot by 3-foot canvas and just started abstractly painting, which is part of oftentimes how all creativity begins, is with the great void and the unknown. Very abstract. It's a conversation. So pay attention to the conversations you're having with your life and with what you're creating in your life. You're the artist of your life, believe me. And working with these energies can help you come to know that if you don't like something, you can change it once you're willing to do so. So anyway, back to Lakshmi. So as I began to abstractly paint, it was as if somebody took my brush and was speaking to me that said, get that color and do this, get that color and do that. Oh, put a circle here. Oh, there's a face here. Oh, it's blue. Put this here and put that jewelry on. There goes that red and there's that hair. And I remember painting all day. And at the end of the day, I called Sage and I said, oh my gosh, I painted a Hindu goddess, but I don't know who she is. But I don't know if she goes in the deck or not. So Sage said she'd come over the next day and look at her and she'd let me know. Well, I was gone and she had a key to my house, and she came in and found her actually sitting on my bedstead because I'd slept under her that night. Her energy was so great. And she called me on my cell phone and she said, oh my God, Katherine, you're so understated. You painted Lakshmi with all her symbols correctly. And I'm like, well, she told me what to do. I just didn't hear her name. And so we had a good laugh. And, then I went on to take a look at Lakshmi's symbolism. She's the Wheel of Fortune in our deck, and which is very appropriate. She's the goddess well known to bring gifts from heaven to earth. I think of her as the one who works with as above, so below principles. She's the divine mama who loves to give her gifts to you. She loves to give you love and beauty and help you out. So I thought that was pretty profound that she started everything in the deck, and Sage interpreted it as the visionary and the tarot being that she is that she said, Katherine, this is the Wheel of Fortune. It's a good omen for what we're creating here. I said, good. I'm glad to know that. Let's go buy a lottery ticket right now. So if she comes into your life, truly, it's about the wealth within you and all around you. So pay attention to the fact that the prosperity principle is a divine feminine principle. If you're in lack, you've fallen out of sync with your femininity, with your divine femininity. If you're listening to the news and afraid that your 401k is not going to be okay because the market's changing and we got so many stressors of war and all this, come back home, look around the earth, sit on her, look at the blessings that you have, and you'll start seeing prosperity beyond the fear mode that's being projected into our reality right now. It is part of the construct of the patriarchy, I hate to say, of the unconscious and of the domination model. That is not our nature and that is not our future. Our restoration brings hope. So if you get worried, if you get immersed in these negative energies and fear mongering projections, do your best to come back to a quiet and safe sanctuary and focus on beauty and love. It's as simple as that, but it doesn't mean it's easy. Call in Lakshmi if you need support to find your abundance and prosperity, because these goddesses are alive and well and ready to help us. And she is absolutely a blessing to restore us, that everything is okay and all is given. All right, let's talk about Lilith as far as reclaiming our divinity. This painting scares the bejesus out of some guys, I swear to God. She kind of scared me at first, to tell you the truth. She was the last goddess I painted. It took a couple of renditions to get to her because she's powerful and she's in your face. So who is Lilith and why do we need to know her story as part of the reclamation of her divinity? Well, if you got to go back to ancient Sumerian times and pre-biblical times, to ancient Judaism, and to, we're talking 1000 AD, most likely, if not sooner than that. And the first stories were really not from sacred texts, but from Sage talking to me about her story. So I'm going to tell it more from the way I heard it, which is pretty awesome and funny at the same time. If you don't know this, Lilith was Adam's first wife. Now, I'm growing up Baptist. I never heard anything about any Lilith and anyone other than Eve in the story. And she's an ancient Sumerian goddess, but she was born equally out of the same substance as Adam. Imagine that, pure equality from the very beginning of humanity. Well, guess what? As time passed, Adam wanted more and more power over her. And so Lilith was like, forget that. I want equal say in every part of life. So she called God and she said, hey, I want out of here. Adam's not playing fair. And so God gave her wings and talons and she flew away. And that was the beginning of the divine feminine being demonized. If you read ancient Judaic texts and other religious texts of those times back in Samaria and Babylonia, and many of the stories that were passed along, she became a demon. And a lot of horrible stories. And so that was just one part of how that was becoming ingrained in our DNA. It was impregnated in the quantum field of those times and passed on generation to generation to generation. The time we are in now is about unwinding those imprints from fear and demonization and returning to our true feminine power. It's not just love and kindness and compassion. There is some fierceness about being authentic and autonomous in our power as ones who know, ones who are connected to the divine and ones who know. That is your birthright, that you are equally created and have equal opportunity here to be you, authentically and unapologetically. Painting her naked is a symbol of pure, authentic honesty. And believe me, she's in your face. I have a gal who bought her who's in corporate America. And, with Zoom and everything these days, she had to move her so it wasn't in the face of everybody on her Zoom call. She was afraid of retribution with her people. One day she told me she finally put it up because she didn't care anymore, which I thought, good for you, girl. So Lilith is also another story about Lilith, goes back to ancient Samaria and the temples of Inanna. Now, Inanna was, in her temple, it was the temple of love. It was the temple of sacred sexuality. It was a temple of healing. So when the men, as the wars are getting more and more vast, and the men would go off to war, when they came home to this place where the temple of Inanna was, they would go to the temple and the priestesses would take them in and they would bathe them and they would clean them and anoint them with sacred oils. And then they would lay with them to heal their hearts through sacred touching and sacred sexuality. And this restored the men because their hearts had been broken through the war. So when the patriarchy began to overtake this part of the world, they began to call women whores and prostitutes. So again, this is a place where we've experienced the demonization and taking us out of the sacred with our sensuality and our sexuality. So bringing Lilith energy back into our lives is about restoring us, being whole in our bodies, loving our sensuality, loving that we can touch and open the heart, loving that we can have these sacred, deep connections that bring restoration to us and to another. So Lilith is a very important image and archetype to work with to get the lesson of coming home to ourselves, to invite that in through ceremony, ritual, intention, prayer, and meditation. to come home to our core power that is innate within our being, not only our intuitive nature, but our sensuality, our connection to beauty, our connection to life force in our bodies and how we share that. That what is of the physical is as sacred as what is in heaven. And that disconnect has been playing out for too long. And now we're ready to come back and claim these parts of ourselves. All right, Kali, she's another great one that many consider Lilith and Kali perhaps dark goddesses. They may not really be dark goddesses, depends on your orientation. Now, this image is a funny story. Kali is this great Hindu goddess who's very fierce and beloved in India. And this image is actually one that devotees understand at the deepest depths, but Westerners or people who do not study her and Durga don't understand. And a good idea of how that happened, you know, before I get into all of who she is and what energy she can offer you in teachings tonight, is that I remember setting her up big canvas up in my studio downtown Fort Collins, where there were other artists that worked at the time. And the back of the painting was to the door where people would enter into my studio. And the guy next to me used to always come in and take a look at what I was painting. He always thought it was cool. It was very different. He was a very conservative Christian guy, did some cool artwork, but he thought I was a little off my rocker probably, but he appreciated my work. So he walked in the door and he looked around the canvas and he goes, "Oh!" And he ran out the door. And I said, "Come back." He said, "No, there's a demon in there." I said, No, she's a great goddess." He said, "Oh no, I'm not coming in there. That's not good." So I don't know if I ever got him back in my studio again, but it's kind of the reaction of many unconscious beings who don't really get her story and symbolism. So she's actually a very powerful but benevolent goddess. She is the part of the feminine that scares most people and has been demonized because she's the power of destruction of the ego. She is here to protect us from ourselves and the negative energies of the ego. And many in Hinduism will say she protects you from evil, which is really the rampant unconscious personality, false personality, and egoic lower nature of humans. So these symbols of the skulls around her neck and the head that she holds are truly about killing off those false personality ego traits of anger and hatred and misunderstanding and cattiness and all the ways we separate ourselves from our heart spaces and our divinity. That she actually is there to clear that out, to clear your aura, to clear your negativity, to clear the hoocha, this junk of the world, and to bring you back to your essence and your purity. So while I was painting her, I had someone come tell me a story. I really wish I could remember who it is, but it was like an angel whispered in my ear because I have no clue who told me the story about a young man. He was probably 30 something because he began praying to Kali when he was a little boy. And for 30 some years, he had been praying to Kali and honoring her in his prayer practices and his meditation. So one day he's meditating and he sees this beautiful woman in all white. She's benevolent and loving and pure, but he feels like it's Kali and he's confused. So he looks at her and he says, "Kali, is that you? I don't understand. Why do you look this way?" And she looked at him with the most loving eyes and she said, "Honey, you have been so devoted and so pure in yourself and your practices. I wanted to let you know who I really am." So Kali is actually purity. She's benevolence. She's pure love. And this is the energy that is restoring us. If you think of any mother bear or lioness, they're very fierce to protect their children. They keep everything away from them that would harm them. And that power of fierceness is what we need to reclaim ourselves and that it's born of love, it's born of purity, it's born of wholeness rather than the other. So you can call to Kali if you need to free yourself, liberate yourself from attachments to things that are finite, from things that create suffering. She will help you to let go. She's the death card in our deck. She's not about physical death necessarily. She's truly about helping you to complete and let go of things that no longer serve you, so that you can come into your heart, so that you can come into new life and continue that in eternal life. All right, got one more goddess I want to focus on as we probably are getting toward the end of this. I'm not sure how much time I got here, but we're at an hour. So let me talk about Pele real quick. She is this beautiful Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcanoes, lightning, fire, and volcanoes. And she took the place of the Tower card in our tarot deck, which is pretty fitting. I used to be terribly afraid of that card, because the Tower card is truly like the falling of communication. Everything's falling apart. Your life is in major transformation, but it's very uncomfortable. Well, the restructuring of this energy with Pele doesn't avoid the destructive aspect of old life. But if you learn about her story and the metaphor in it, her volcanoes come when man or humankind has disrespected themselves and the earth. So imagine that. That's what's happening on our planet right now. Wherever we've disrespected Mother Earth, like the chemical spill in Ohio, which is horrific, it's destroying life in the most ugly ways. It's toxic. We've got it going on in every which way, from the war in the Ukraine to all the conflicts on this planet, to how we don't honor our bodies and our foods, et cetera, et cetera. So when that happens, if you've ever heard the story of someone steals a rock from the volcano and take it home, usually bad things happen and they mail it back to Hawaii afterwards. I don't know if you've ever heard those stories, but I'd heard them. Well, that's Pele at work, that they'll tell you that you didn't ask permission. And so she's gonna get after you. She's gonna scold you, so to speak. So when she's erupted into the volcanoes and the lava flows, those lava flows purify the land where there's been a lack of respect. But you know what they do that's not just destruction? They bring new life. An island is born out of the lava flow. So she's a great teacher that as we let go of what no longer works, new life is assured to us, that it is given. And I think that's a really important thing to know, because most people I know are pretty afraid of change unless they're movers and shakers and cause change all the time. And even that can be a courageous act. So Pele is the epitome of working with fire, the element of fire, to purify and clear yourself. So I recommend fire ceremonies to purify your energy and to give life force. When fire burns something up, it alchemizes it. It truly is about turning lead into gold. When you stand in a fire ceremony close to the fire, your aura is cleaned, but you're given life force from everything that's burning up, creates prana and chi. That's why it's an important ceremonial piece to practice or to go to when we need it. All right, I've got to cut. Let's see. We're going to breeze through these. I'm going to culminate my talks about, because I promised you, what do you do to open your heart and come into this energy? And I've got a lot of things written here. So let me grab the lessons from these 22 goddesses that relate to everyday life. So I'm just going to go through them very quick, and so we can wrap this up and make sure you get everything you need here. And, you know, without going through these goddesses, I'm going to stop on Mother Earth real quick. She is our mother here on Earth. Sheila, do I have 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I'm going to breeze through these best as I can and sum it up. So we have everything we need. If you never listen to these additional goddess stories and the essence of their teachings, but I do encourage you to listen if you will. But Mother Earth holds the key to many of us being in a body on this planet and that everything is given. If you feel stuck, if you don't feel happy, if things are upside down in your life, or you're feeling stressed or depressed, any of those negative experiences, go outside and lay face down on the earth. Put your heart to her, or do a grounding exercise where you drop a root into the earth. I like to not only ground down, but I connect down into this core of Mother Earth. And then I imagine that there's two channels of energy, one that where I can drop my worries and fears into her. She eats our fear, just like she eats our carbon dioxide and gives us oxygen. She gives us life force back. And so I imagine there's another channel where that life force comes back in through my body and my central core energy, through my spine and through my energy field. And then I imagine reaching upwards as if I'm a tree and connecting to the light above and within, so that I'm connected within and without, above and below, and that I'm the conduit between heaven and earth. And that every one of us can do that. It will charge your energy bodies and help you clear out negativity and fear. And that's our biggest thing about moving back to the heart. Love will always conquer fear. Love, the frequency of love. It's interesting. I wrote an article on the frequency of love recently. And if you look at the solfeggio tones, and that scale, 528 hertz is the vibration that we consider as divine love. It goes right into the DNA to heal it and to shift us into miraculous healings. I bet Sheila works with this all day long, along with other frequencies, is that this energy is available to all of us through the sun and through the plants and through the opening of our heart spaces. So let's talk about these teachings of these goddesses. In a word, Uzume is the Shinto goddess of laughter and mirth, and her message is lighten up. Don't take everything so seriously. Truly, you are protected in this lightness. You are protected, and as you lighten up and you laugh again, as you step away from the seriousness of this human world, the light returns. So that's a whole nother story with the goddess Amaterasu, but I'm not going to go into that because I'll be here for another hour. All right, Morgan Le Fay, she's cut off for some reason. Her words are, you are magical. She's the magician in the traditional tarot deck. She's the sorceress in ours, and she's all about returning home to the magic within, that you can shapeshift your circumstances as you recognize you're the author of your world, that you can tap into the elemental energy on this planet to transmute and transform your life. So remember that you're magical. Look for the magic. Whatever you look for expands. Isis is the high priestess in our deck. She's the queen of Egypt, the lovely mother goddess of Egypt. And her message is go within as the high priestess. Go within. She's the one who is able to bring life from death. She is the goddess of the universe. And she's here to remind us to tap into our roots and our intuition, and to work with ceremony and ritual, to trust our intuition and inner guidance. That's part of return to the divine feminine and opening our hearts. Oops, that didn't go the right way. Oops. What am I doing wrong? Sorry, folks. Let me get back to doing it the right way. All right, Kuan Yin, compassion. The goddess of compassion. She's the empress on our deck. These green and pink energies are that frequency of the heart itself. Practice compassionate kindness for yourself and others. Mindfulness, but heartfulness. If you do that, you will come home to your heart space and joy once again. Stepping aside from judgment, returning to compassion is the healing we need right now. We've talked about Lilith coming into your power. Own your voice, be true to your inner knowing, and say what you need. From that, you will fly free of what keeps you down and limits you. You are limitlessness. You've got wings, ladies, and men if you're on the call. Sophia is here to remind us to be wise. She is the mother of God in the Bible. Imagine that. They even talk about it in some place. So she's here to help us come home to our wisdom. Trust your inner knowing. Reflect upon your circumstances. What's the gold you can get from it? All right, Shakti in our deck is the ecstatic union. This is the energy of enlightenment. So this is about taking time to go within. That's repeated here in a lot of places. So I'm not going to go too far into it, but it is, you may try Kundalini yoga, working with the fire within to clear out all the old ways we are separated from our divinity to return home. It's within us. Go for your gold. Be wise and don't fight. Keep your eye on the goal, and you've got the power to get to where you need to be. This is actually a feminine energy that is very practical about getting to your goals. It is an active principle, even though this is connected to your intuition and your knowing. What's in your heart is worth going for. When you decide that you want something, call upon that energy of tenacity and focus to get you there. Crow Woman's about sacred law. She brings the medicine that what is yours will come to you as you stay true to what is within you. She's about balanced truth and justice. Trust divine law rather than man's laws. Yeah, don't run the stoplight, but do trust what is being given to you. Yamaya is the oracle, and she's reminding you that you are to be the intuitive knower and to develop that, to trust it. It's going to keep awakening, so you can't avoid it. To embrace it is going to be your healing. We've talked about Lakshmi. I do want to say hello to White Buffalo Calf Woman. She is about purity and returning home to life as a sacred journey. What if everything that happened in your life is actually part of your sacred experience? Can you make it sacred instead of resent something that's happened to you that wasn't fun? Come back to ceremony and ritual, work with fire and prayer, and return home to your heart. The sacrifice card with Mother Mary is knowing that life is eternal and that the physical realm is finite, but she is all about the sacred heart, forgiveness, and sacrificing that which is negative or no longer works for you to come home to love and to trust in that grace. I've talked about Kali. Bridget's about creativity. So again, we've talked about that a bit. Work with your creativity to come back to your heart and joy. It's going to awaken parts of you that need to come out. Mary Magdalene is here to initiate us into the higher frequencies. Take time for ceremony and ritual. If you don't, my book is a great one for that. So are there plenty other books out there. But this is about coming into a higher Christ light or energy of enlightenment. We've talked about Pele and burning away. Pleiadian Star Goddess is here to help us open to our destiny. You know, this card is about receiving, knowing that everything is being given to you beyond what you may believe in your linear mind. So look for the magic. Open your arms and your heart physically like this, and your heart will help start to open. Imagine your hands are catching the energy of the highest blessings that you can have. We've talked about Ix Chel. Amaterasu is the sun goddess. She is about you being the light. The great void is that anything is possible. What is it like to be curious? It'll be your greatest creative energy when you're in between and in the liminal spaces. Open and be curious. You're the creator. Mother Gaia reminds us that we're connected. Everything is given and all is connected. Great gifts are upon us. So, if I can get my thing to work here, it's not working. I'm trying to get out of my share, may not be able to. So, sorry, folks, I'm just going to talk to you like this. This is going to stay here. I can't get it to go down.
I'll get that done for you.
Can you get it? I don't know what's going on with my mouse.
There we go.
There we are. All right. So I hope that was helpful in getting a little bit of energy around the divine feminine and some of our helpers. And yeah, Sheila, you got any questions, comments?
Well, you know I do. You know, I always do. One of the things, Catherine, I think is different, so different about the deck that you use is the goddesses came to you first, and the goddesses then revealed the information, and then you were able to translate that. And I know when people are in my office, I have them right next to a big Merkaba that sits on a table. Everybody always is going over and drawing this. Oh my God, how did I know? This is exactly what I need, or this is exactly what's happening. And for me, I've kept them out for all these years because people receive exactly what they need. And
Yep.
they'll just do a really quick, you know, a single card draw. But I really, really like that. I want to hit a couple of, you know, the comments. I told Glenda also works with the goddess, and I texted her. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to get a hold of Catherine and invite her, interview her on your show. So I think she's going to reach out to you for that. And so, one of the things I'd like to ask for you to do is if you could put your contact information in the chat so that if people want to reach out to you, they can. If you want to put the name of your book and your decks, or your website so that people can reach out. But as I look through all of the comments, people are, you know, they're just expressing gratitude, feeling connection, love Lilith. Yes, Susie, I do too. Every time you would bring a card up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my favorite. Oh yeah, that's my favorite. Oh yeah, that's my favorite. I do. I love them all. Mary loves your paintings, your stories. Mary and I, in is it May or June? I forget. But we are going. She's going to be my co-host on my Monday program with Cosmic Conversations, and it's all going to be about the arts. And we'll have to get back a hold of you
Oh, that'd be great.
when we do that too. But Jude said she loves this, but she had to leave, and she was going to catch the replay at 8.
I'll just
Glenda,
hold these up while you talk and see if we can see them okay.
there you go. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not looking real good in this lighting, but the Mythical Goddess Tarot is on Amazon. If you buy it at my site, let me know. Actually, I can send a coupon out. I can get that up and send it out if you want. But I'm happy to sign it for anybody who tells me they saw it here and send it to you direct from my site at katherineskaggs.com. It is a couple of time award winner. It got in 2021, I think it was. It got a gold award for iconic deck and product of the year with cover awards. And then my book last year, Artist, Shaman, Healer, Sage, again, hard to see in this lighting. It got 12 awards last year and has been quite a kick, but it's a beautifully illustrated full color book on shamanism and mysticism to help you on your path of ceremony and ritual. And then one I didn't talk about is the Masters of Light Wisdom Oracle that just gave birth in October 2022 and is going out this year into awards banquets. We'll see what happens with that. But it's about ascended masters, archangels, and other beings that I've channeled in from the cosmos. A lot of Pleiadian energy in this deck. I have a watcher in this deck, an ancient angel in this deck. I've got all kinds of beings in this deck that also are here to help us come home to ourselves. So anyway.
Well, great. Well, I want to open this up. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask Catherine? Oh, okay, Mary, come on up.
Well, first of all, I have goosebumps 20 layers out. I went to Boulder, I lived in Fort Collins, I'm a Pleiadian, I'm a Pisces, I'm an artist, I'm a designer, I love Mother Earth. And it's not a question, I'm just saying, we bow to you, my cup runneth over. And my name is Mary. And thank you for bringing so much love and light and beauty and feminine power that we all need. We are moving forward. We are in a renaissance. So thank you for touching us on so many levels. You're multisensory, you're multidimensional, your love oozes out. And we are in a feminine time, and we are, watch out, boys and everybody, we are all on fire right now. And thank goodness for the revolution of time. The 60s was tiddlywinks compared to what we're going through right now. And it's wonderful to see everything crash and burn so we can rebirth fully and happily enjoy and honor and truth. So thank you for being such an inspiration. Thank you, Sheila, always for bringing on the best people. I can see why you two are friends. I wish I still had my condo in Boulder. I lived in Boulder for a long time, and I miss my Colorado girls. So look forward to having you on when Sheila and I are together soon. So thank you just so much for your great energy and beauty and love. Really appreciate.
Thanks, Mary. All right. Is anybody else? Hi, Susie. Come on up.
For a couple of nights, but I was gonna like try to sleep. This was so awesome, Catherine. I mean, yeah, I've taught Tantra and been in that, and everything you said, and I think it's so important that the sacred feminine understands that we don't have to resent the men. We don't have to resent what's happened. We got to be free and clean. And God, this was so beautiful. I love your paintings. I love Lilith. Power. So much power, you know. And I mean, oh, and I've had I lived in Hawaii, and I've been speaking recently to someone in Hawaii, and I know two people that Madame Paley has come to, and one of them was pure wine, kind of brown skin, and she was white for 3 days. It was, I mean, these goddesses are so strong, you know, they bring such power. I just think you're awesome. I'm so glad I stayed awake. Really, so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And Susie, you know, you bring up a really good point about we don't have to get rid of the men, because, you know, I always tell people, if you look at the infinity circle, how it comes around, and we started out you know, with the divine feminine, and then they've turned it into the dark feminine, and then we had the patriarchal side starting to come up, but now we're coming back into that merging of the two, so that, you know, we can balance that masculine, the masculine can balance the feminine, and we can move forward, and the men embracing their feminine energy. And so, yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, anybody else? Glenda.
I just want to say thank you, because I work with a lot of these goddesses, by the way, in my healing practice, in my Reiki practice in general. And I'm also a shaman. So I owe this, and I'm also Wiccan. So I bring all the energies together, and it was wonderful to see how you put it all together. And by the way, Lilith got me kicked out of Sunday school because I did ask that question. Okay, if it was only Adam and Eve, how do we have all these people? And then you're telling me you can't, you know, get together with your brother and your sister. So something is not right. I was that child.
Where'd the land of Nod come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you. This was fantastic, and I will be contacting you definitely.
Awesome. I look forward to it, Glenda. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Glenda.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Bonnie. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Hey, Brandon, let me ask you something. How did it feel being wrapped up in all this goddess energy tonight? No comment. Okay. All right. Oh, there you are. Yeah, we can. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry, I'm not on there, my mic. But what I was saying is, it was very good, because a lot of these, what you were saying, in the beginning, like all of these changes, especially like when the cards coming through, when you're saying like you get exactly what you need to, all of these cards like started answering a lot of dilemmas that I'm in right now. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm missing. Oh, this is like the divine feminine, the creative aspect that I'm missing. Oh, this is, you know, like so many aha moments. So thank you.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
Brandon. Okay, anybody else? All right. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for being here. It was really fun. It's always good to connect. I don't always get up to Fort Collins, but hey, we got Zoom now. So,
Yay. I gotta come
yeah.
your way.
Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome. And so, before we go in for some final comments, I just want to remind people, if you've not already signed up on the Galactic Alliance mailing list, please go to our website and do so at thegalacticalliance.org. It's thegalacticalliance.org, and I'm always like, which way, which way? Here we go. It's right here on the screen, thegalacticalliance.org. You'll receive 2 mailings a week from us, and you'll be notified of our Monday and our Thursday night speakers. And so you can always go to our website to also see who's going to be speaking. You can put down, if the link that you use tonight, you can always use that for Monday and Thursday. And so just make a note of that and join us. We'd love to have you. And for all you people out there who are watching in other audiences, we appreciate your being here. And if you have any questions, you can always get a hold of us, especially if you're on YouTube. You can put some comments in the chat and I'll try to bring those forward. So thank you so much to everybody. And again, Catherine, thank you so much. And I want to give you the opportunity to kind of do a little bit of a wrap up, or if you have any final comments for people.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope you all will go to my website at katherineskaggs.com, which I did put in the chat. Part of it is I've got a lot of classes coming up and a lot of opportunities. If you can come locally, there's often drum making here, sacred object making. I've got an intuitive painting class in March coming up. And I have a 6-month course in shamanism coming up. That's a pretty big deal, but I have people from all over come into that. But I also am going to be starting doing some dream interpretation classes online as well, and some healing work online. But, you know, I'm here to keep it going. So I appreciate the opportunity to be part of such a great group and to be of service to you all, because my heart is so filled every time I get to meet every one of you and share and to receive your blessings of your beauty.
Beautiful. Well, beautiful. Well, thank you again so much for being here. Thanks to all of you guys for being here. Much love to you. And until we are back together again next week, namaste and much love to everyone. So have a beautiful and blessed evening. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.